you're dressed this way, you might ask? That's because today I'm here to give you my hot take on Marvel Loki. What's up, witches? Today I am back to talk to you about everyone's favorite, most controversial god within Norse mythology, Loki. Specifically, today I want to give you my hot takes and personal opinions slash Norse Pagan reacts to Marvel Loki. Now, full disclaimer as always, everything that I'm going to say in this video is 100% strictly my opinion, so do not come for me. I'm sure my own thoughts, feelings, and opinions on Disney / Marvel's take on Loki are going to differ wildly from a lot of other people out there, especially others who might take a more traditional route within the heathen community. I myself would probably describe myself as more of an eclectic Norse pagan or neo-pagan, which I think gets a lot of flack for kind of more like new age type associations, but whatever. To each their own, whatever floats your boat. I mean, we're all just out here trying to live our best lives at the end of the day. But for me personally, I'm a creature of the modern age. I'm a material girl living in the material world, and frankly, I feel like the gods built Midgard for us to live in and enjoy. So occasionally that's going to include watching things like Disney Plus. As usual, I'm getting wildly off topic. Point being, I did watch all of the 6-episode Marvel Loki miniseries, and I was kind of taking notes and reflecting on it as I watched every week. And so now I would like to go back and just give you kind of a summary of my thoughts on Marvel Loki. So let's get into it. And also, I just want to let you know that I am looking off of my notes for this before I get started, because I'm never going to be the kind of YouTuber that is going to like write down, memorize, and read off of a full-blown script, because my brain is just not equipped for all of that. But I did want to try to write down some sort of coherent outline to try to make sure that I cover everything I want to talk about and stay relatively on subject. So if you see me kind of glancing down, that's why. So while not true to the Norse mythology as laid out in the sagas and the Eddas written down by Snorri, personally, as someone who has had a lot of interactions and worked pretty closely with Loki in the almost year now that I've been practicing Norse paganism, personally I do see a lot of similar character traits, patterns, and behaviors in Marvel Loki that I see in deity Loki. So in addition to being an occasional mischief maker and prank puller, both in the movies and the myths, in both versions he is definitely an embodiment of the forces of chaos. And I think the Loki TV show in particular really delves a little bit deeper into what do I want to say? Into those archetypes than perhaps the movies did, because it's really kind of exploring more in depth not only the concept of, is Loki a villain? What makes Loki a villain? what makes a Loki, which I thought was very interesting as we journeyed through what I liked to fondly refer to as into the Loki-verse that we kind of got with this show. It kind of goes further from there into, is Loki a villain? Can a villain be redeemed? And what would it look like if a villain character did try to kind of undertake the stereotypical hero's journey arc? Because what you'll see with Loki in this TV show is they're kind of exploring the concept of the Wheel of Time. Time is a flat circle, time being stuck in a loop, and just repeating the same actions, the same behaviors over and over, and therefore, especially where Loki is concerned, the idea of free will versus fate.
Not supposed to happen. According to whom?
So with the plot of the TV show, it's kind of touching on whether things are fated to happen and laid out a certain way, and whatever you do, whether you think you're acting of your own free will or not, in fact, you're actually just fulfilling your predestined route and path in life, and the people who kind of buck against those outlooks, Loki, probably first and foremost amongst them.
You've always lived within your set path.
I live within whatever path I choose. My choices are my own.
In addition to that, I think it also brings in the concept that we see play out a lot in the Norse mythology, which is the self-fulfilling prophecy. And, are we fated to have the same outcomes if we, no matter how hard we try to stop it, and in fact, is our trying to act to stop fate what causes it to happen in the first place? It's all very wibbly, wobbly, timey-wimey paradox type stuff that can definitely send you down a rabbit hole. As far as Marvel Loki versus God Loki, the thing that it kind of shows us about his character within this structure, this bureaucratic structure that is the Time Variance Authority.
The idea that your little club decides the fate of trillions of people across all of existence at the behest of 3 space lizards, yes, it's funny. It's absurd.
Loki is kind of the one to see the man behind the curtain, because as someone who is a master of transformation and illusion, as we see in the myths and the Marvel, he is almost either able to or kind of naturally destined to be the one character who would be able to see beyond the illusion of others, both in the stories and in the TV show. He's the one that's able to kind of see the man behind the curtain of the TVA and kind of knows that it's all a front and just an illusion.
The timekeepers have built quite the circus. And I see the clowns are playing their parts to perfection.
I know what this place is.
What is it?
It's an illusion. It's a cruel, elaborate trick conjured by the weak to inspire fear. A desperate attempt at control.
So he is going to be the one to finally break the cycle, which is very fitting, seeing as Myth Loki is the one that breaks the stagnation cycle and sets off the events of Ragnarok, which, while yes is a destructive event, also kind of resets the clock and allows things to begin anew and start fresh. So yeah, it causes in this case with the TV show, a lot of chaos, destruction, might be setting off this whole multiverse of madness thing that it's building into in terms of the greater Marvel MCU. It also kind of speaks to Loki as that agent of chaos within the mythological realm, and being the one that causes chaos and destruction, but it also leading to giving people freedom and free will and rebirth. Because I think what you'll see and what they're kind of playing out in his story arc within this show is that before, Loki was kind of stuck repeating his same bad habits, stuck in this kind of cycle of stagnation where he's destined to commit the same acts of betrayal and trickery over and over. I think at one point Sylvie even asks him, Does what makes a Loki the fact that we're always destined to lose? Or what Mobius says to him at the beginning when he's kind of breaking him of his illusions of grandeur?
You weren't born to be king, Loki. You were born to cause pain and suffering and death, all so that others can achieve their best versions of themselves.
Loki seems to be stuck in this cycle, this pattern of behavior, and he can't break free. The timeline itself can't break free. And so he says that the timeline wants to break free, and that's why it manifests Loki's as this literal agent of chaos. So what you'll see kind of in the arc of the TV show is he's finally been removed from that time loop. He's been removed from the cycle of karma and repeating his same actions without being able to view them from an outside perspective like he is now. And it's kind of, I see it as kind of a metaphor for the wheel of karma, and he's kind of granted that outside enlightenment in a way and able to really examine his actions objectively for the first time, and is able to finally achieve like self-knowledge and growth as a character as a result. Until now, as we've seen, and what you will also see with God Loki, is that he would be unable to change himself, but acts as a catalyst of change in others. So what you'll see with is, in the myths, he cuts Sif's hair, and that leads to the creation of Mjolnir and Skidblathnir and all of these great gifts and weapons and magical items that were created by the dwarves as a result of that action. And we also see he causes Ragnarok, and then with specifically movie Loki, he's the one that causes Thor to be banished in the first Thor movie. So Thor is banished to Midgard, and that causes all of Thor's character growth. Within the wider scope of Marvel, Loki's actions are what leads to the formation of the Avengers. So even within the realm of Marvel, Loki is still acting as that catalyst for kind of greater good in a way, even if it's causing chaos and destruction in the time being, or in the moment. It kind of leads me to my second point, where I see a lot of similarity between Marvel Loki and deity Loki, is that Loki embodies to me a lot of concepts related to like the inner child and inner child work, which I think Hel, his daughter, also really helps us with. And so it's interesting the kind of opposite ways in which I've seen them kind of tag team that issue just within my own personal life, where Hel is kind of the one that nurtures and strengthens and helps us reparent ourselves and regain a sense of groundedness in a way to rebuild a firm foundation within ourselves, whereas Loki is he represents to me that more subconscious id side of ourselves, the hidden subconscious, that shadow self that you might repress because you think it's deemed societally unacceptable. Loki wants you to kind of free that side of yourself, be more playful, open, adventurous, explorative. So I think what you really see with Marvel Loki especially is that he often seems to be motivated by a perceived sense of rejection or inadequacy. He just wants to be held among the same status and esteem as Thor and Odin and the other Aesir, and I think there is definitely an element of that within deity Loki as well, because he is only technically half Aesir, and his father is a Jotun. So if you're really holding to like very strict notions of like quote unquote divine right of kingship and what makes the Aesir divine, he technically wouldn't qualify as like a full-blooded Aesir. To me, I think that's just getting kind of hung up in the more mundanities of things instead of taking a more esoteric view of these beings. But I can definitely see where that might have kept him from achieving a greater status, from achieving acclamations that he might have wanted in comparison to some of the other gods, from what you'll see, even in the Eddas themselves. And I think it also leads to where we see Loki by the time we get to Lokasenna, where he really is this kind of bitter, resentful character who is not afraid to just really come at the other gods very hard and like read them for filth. And I think that stems from what we see in Marvel Loki, where we see him kind of broken down as a character, and we see behind the mask of villain Loki, where we see kind of his loneliness, his isolation, and what I see as him acting out when he's trying to hurt others or betray others. He's acting out of that perceived sense of rejection, acting like a wounded inner child. Mobius is asking him, do you like hurting people? Look at all these terrible things that you've done, and really just kind of grinding into him about it. And Loki finally admits, like, no, I don't enjoy hurting people.
I don't enjoy hurting people. I do it because I have to, because I've had to, because it's part of the illusion.
So because of things that either were done to him in the past, or that he perceived were done to him in the past, or what I think, especially when you delve really deeply into some of the things I touched on in my Odin Loki Two Sides of the Same Coin video, where I think Loki kind of has to act within the myths as kind of Odin's man behind the scenes, working in the shadows to do things that Odin might not be able to do directly, or that might not be so above board. Loki, yeah, he's kind of the one that takes the resentment and takes the brunt of those things by being the one to be willing to act outside the strict moral codes or codes of honor, things like that, that Odin might have to uphold himself to more. So it kind of really spoke to that a little bit to me. I don't think the motivation for Marvel Loki is quite the same for why he feels compelled to do the things he does, but as far as what he says about feeling like his hand is being forced to commit these more heinous acts, I think there's definitely a kernel of truth there when it comes to Myth Loki. One thing that I think you'll see is very similar and very prominent within Marvel Loki is that he plays both to and against others' perceptions of him. And I think that's something that Deity Loki teaches us to do, because he acts mischievous, sly, acts like a trickster, a jokester, but it's almost in a lot of ways to kind of make you let your guard down around him, or make you like underestimate him in a way. I think you see this a lot more with Marvel Loki, especially in the TV show. He's kind of acting a little bit more jokey and lighthearted, and there's a lot of witty banter taking place back and forth with him and the other characters. He really has his wit and his flighting on in full display in the show. What it's also doing is kind of making people underestimate him. They might kind of see him as like, oh, well, this version of Loki, he's not very smart. He's just kind of more of a trickster type. But deep down, like, he really can be very crafty and very sly. But at the same time, he'll also play to and against that by, I think what you'll see in the show is he knows people are on guard around him. He knows people don't trust him. So he'll expect you, like, he knows that you know that at some point he's gonna try to betray you or get one up on you, pull one over on you. And so he might wait and not do it when he knows you're expecting it, so that then you might be like, okay, yeah, maybe maybe he has changed, or maybe he's not going to do it this time. And then he'll wait and be like, oh, no, gotcha, now I am going to do it, or now I'm going to do something else. Or I think what it kind of plays into in the TV show especially is they're all expecting him not to do the noble thing, not to do the heroic thing, not to do the self-sacrificing thing, because Loki always puts himself first. And he's always out to just survive at the end of the day. And so they don't expect him to do things that would act against type. There's a lot to be learned about navigating day-to-day life and the ins and outs of dealing with other people, and just, living and dealing with reality and how the world really works and really is. I think there's a lot about those aspects of both myth and Marvel Loki that are very similar to each other, and is kind of what I see as what Loki has to teach us. I think that is the one thing that Loki definitely teaches maybe above all else, and kind of what you see his character being broken down into in the show is that, and that what he also teaches others in the show is that you can lie to others, you can be very good at it, you can even get pretty good at lying to yourself, but at the end of the day, the one person you can't lie to is yourself. So he breaks down those illusions that we might have up about ourselves and forces us to examine them and confront them. So he forces us to confront our own lies and illusions that we might have, and that we might even not know that we have. I think that pretty much sums up most of my thoughts regarding what I saw that does resonate with my own personal gnosis of Loki. Before I leave this video off, I just wanted to give a few fun shout outs for kind of the Easter eggs that you saw in the TV show that I thought were funny, or that really stood out to me. First off, I love that it kind of included a little nod to the story of Loki cutting off Sif's hair as a prank. I think it's highly fitting that, of course, the first person that Loki catches feels for in the TV show is a version of himself. I think it's interesting that one thing you'll see is that Loki has a little case file in the TVA, and it lists his gender as fluid, which I know has a lot of people up in arms out there in the greater pagan heathen community, and a lot of debate as to, is that accurate, is it not accurate, are they just trying to SJW Loki so that Disney can get likes or whatever. But Loki in the myths is a shapeshifter. We all know, I'm sure we've all heard by now, the story of the time Loki turned into a horse. And I think that you will find nods buried here and there in the other stories that not only does he just take on a disguise of being a woman or female in order to play tricks or deceive people and get into places that he wouldn't otherwise be allowed to go. I think that he is also someone who is a master of transformation, shape-shifting, and illusion magic. I think it makes perfect sense that his gender would be listed as fluid. I mean, one of the Lokis in the Lokiverse that you meet is a fucking alligator, for crying out loud, and he's still a Loki, so we need to not take it so seriously. In my opinion, that's just my opinion, don't come for me. I did also like that at one point they called Loki the god of outcasts. I think that first and foremost might be a lot of what draws us in the modern day to working with him, is people who kind of feel a sense of being the black sheep, not fitting in anywhere else, and being an outcast in one way or another. He's the one that will just kind of he'll accept all comers, come as you are. He will work with you. And I think I told someone in the community online who was asking about Loki today that I think it's because he is so misunderstood and doesn't get a lot of love or attention because of the way he's viewed, that he really just likes to be noticed and likes to get attention. He appreciates being noticed and feeling the love every now and then. And finally, as someone who loves true crime, that's like all I listen to at work is murder podcasts, like true crime podcasts and things like that. I love the fact that they gave a little nod to, like a little inside reference to Loki being D.B. Cooper. I mean, not only does Tom Hiddleston look eerily similar to that like police sketch artist of D.B. Cooper, that just made my little true crime loving brain like go from like 1 to 100 in terms of excitement. So I thought that was hilarious, appropriate, and funny. So that's just kind of my 2 cents on the matter. I wanted to just kind of hop on the bandwagon, so to speak, and give you my opinion as someone who is kind of new to the whole Norse paganism thing, taking it from a more modern day approach. Views Loki as kind of one of those more gray area characters, both within Marvel and the myths myself, and does. At this point, I have to admit that I have probably had more dealings and interactions with Loki than I have with Odin, in spite of my best efforts and how much I admire Odin and look up to him and want to work with him. But Loki, I think, much like the Vanir, is just maybe a little bit more on our wavelength. I don't know how to describe it. Maybe it's because he's chained here on Midgard somewhere, if you're willing to buy into the myths. Some people would say, I've really had people say that means that that you're a crazy person if you think you've interacted with Loki at all, because how can he interact with the world if he's chained up for all time? But I mean, these are metaphysical, all-powerful cosmic celestial beings here that deal outside of the bonds of time and space. Insert time as a flat circle clip again here. You need to kind of view it from outside the box, so to speak. But yeah, I think Loki has kind of just been a little bit more receptive, a little bit more ready, willing, and able to give notice and attention in exchange for receiving it. That's just my own personal experience, and I think honestly that's just because of the things within my own nature, past, and personality that jive more with the aspects of Loki that I've touched on both here and in my other videos, as opposed to aspects of Odin. So I think that's one of the great things about, I don't know why I said that so weird, but I think that's one of the great things about this faith or this practice, whatever you want to call it, is that since there is such a wide range of deities within Norse paganism, like just within Norse paganism, there's something for everyone. There's like, no matter what your personality is or what your interests are or how you view the world or what you want to do, what your goals are or what you want to achieve, there is a deity out there that already maybe fits those things and will work with you. So I guess maybe there's just something about me that appealed to Loki. I think I've always been somewhat of a chaos kid at heart, as much as I might want to fight it sometimes. Now I'm just gonna roll with it. I hope you enjoyed just kind of hearing my thoughts on Marvel's take on the Trickster, Lord of Chaos. Until the next one, stay classy, Pagan.